Hey everybody, Wigglytuff here again, and this is going to be episode 3 of What If Misty Never Met Ash. If you have not seen the first 2 episodes, I will have a link to the playlist in the description below. But without any further ado, let's get started with episode 3, New Friends, New Journey. Seeing these eyes so suddenly, Misty screams in terror and falls backwards on her butt with an oof. After catching her breath from the sudden fright, Misty pulls Staryu away from the shallow, in fear of it getting shocked again, then curiously and cautiously takes a second look into the water. The eyes are still there, and Misty can see sadness in them. Getting a better look, she sees that these eyes belong to a Stunfisk, just like the one that her sister had battled in the gym challenge. Misty is confused by this, as she and her sisters had always come to this lake to find or play with Pokemon, and never seen a Stunfisk here before. I wonder, Misty ponders to herself. Suddenly, a young boy with a blue jacket bikes over at the top of the hill, saying, "Hey, are you alright? I heard screaming." Misty turns around and responds, yeah, this strange Pokemon frightened me is all." Strange Pokemon? That one? The boy asks, pointing at Staryu, who's getting up, trying to shake off the paralysis. No, that's my Staryu, Misty says, recalling Staryu so it can rest, before explaining. There's a strange Pokemon in the water that I've never seen here before. I think it's called Stunfisk. Stunfisk? The young boy reacts. The curious young boy runs down the hill and peers into the shallow to see the sad flatfish Pokemon. He then confirms, that's a Stunfisk alright. But they shouldn't be in Kanto at all, at least not in the wild. Misty then mentions she witnessed a blonde boy's battle at the Cerulean City gym, who had one, and that's how she knew what it was called in the first place. A blonde boy? From Unova? The boy asks. Misty nods, saying, yeah, his name was Pert. The young boy shakes his head in disappointment, and speaks in a melancholy tone, saying, he did it again. What do you mean? How do you know him? Who are you? Misty asks. The young boy explains that his name is Tanner, and that himself, Pert, and a third trainer came here from the Unova region to learn more about Pokemon from other regions as an exchange program, as they were younger than the other kids from their town and couldn't receive a usual starter Pokemon. He then begins to explain Pert's personality and how he wants to be a very strong trainer and train strong Pokemon, and that he'll release any Pokemon that he deems weak. But to release a Pokemon in a region that's completely alien to it... Tanner sighs, not being able to finish his sentence or find words. Misty, being taken aback by hearing this, exclaims how horrible that is, and reaches a hand into the shallow to pet the abandoned Pokemon. Tanner cries out, trying to stop the red-headed girl from touching the electric Pokemon, but it's too late. Misty already made contact and began petting Stunfisk. The boy is stunned and explains that Stunfisk usually shock people who come into contact with them, although he guesses mostly from being stepped on. Well, we shouldn't just leave it here, Misty says before turning to Stunfisk and asking if he would like to join her. Stunfisk's face perks up with curiosity and slight positivity before wiggling its body around and letting out a soft, joyful cry. Tanner asks Misty if she's sure she wants to care for a Pokemon so foreign to her. Misty, pulling out a Pokeball from her bag, says, I'll be fine. I'm Misty, and I'm on a journey to become an amazing water-type Pokemon specialist. So adding another water-type to my team will be great. Misty? Tanner says, trying to inform Misty of something. I'm sure you'll be great friends with Goldeen and Staryu, Misty tells Stunfisk. Misty, Tanner tries to interject again. Though, you and Staryu got off on the wrong foot. Or... Finn, Misty continues, unintentionally ignoring Tanner, but is just so excited that she's going to be gaining a new friend. Misty, it's not, but nothing an apology can't fix, Misty finishes, cutting off Tanner as she presses the Pokeball against Stunfisk, adding him to her party. Misty! Tanner speaks louder, trying to get her attention. Misty got Stunfisk! Misty cheers, leaping for joy. At this point, Tanner is fed up and shouts, Misty! What? Misty responds, confused as to why he shouted at her. Tanner, back to his regular speaking voice, says, sorry, Stunfisk isn't a water type. What? Stunfisk isn't a water type. They're ground electric types, Tanner informs. Nuh-uh. Yeah. But he was in the water here. And in the gym battle, he swam as well as any water type. Misty retaliates. Tanner shakes his head, and although they live in aquatic habitats and that they're a species of fish, Stunfisk are ground electric types. Misty stares at the Pokeball silently for a bit before saying, "Oh well, he's a fish and he's my new friend, and I'm not going to abandon him like some jerk," Misty exclaims. Hearing this and seeing the confidence Misty exudes, Tanner smiles, knowing that Stunfisk is in good hands now. Tanner then suggests that they head back to Cerulean before nightfall. Misty agrees and they head to the Cerulean Pokemon Center. Misty, after having Staryu and Stunfisk checked in to be restored, goes to see if the center has any rooms available for the night, as she does not want to go back home and risk bumping into her sisters. Unfortunately, there are no vacant rooms tonight. Tanner, hearing this, offers her one of the extra bunks in his room. Misty asks if he's sure. Tanner confirms, but with the condition that she shows him her Pokemon in the morning so that he may study them, and that he gets to travel with her to help him study more Pokemon along the way, as he wants to become a Pokemon researcher and maybe a Pokemon professor someday, studying the strength Pokemon gain from the bonds between trainer and Pokemon. Misty happily accepts, as Tanner seems to know a good amount about Pokemon and could be a great help to her along the way. Early the next morning, Misty and Tanner head to the Pokemon Center's indoor pool. Here, Misty keeps her word and shows her Pokemon to Tanner, sending out all three into the pool. Tanner pulls out his Pokédex and scans Goldeen and Staryu, gaining info on them for his Pokédex. He then scans Stunfisk to inform Misty of his moves, being Mudshot, Thundershock, Water Gun, and Camouflage, and that the species does not evolve. Tanner then suggests that he and her have a battle to help her get in sync with her Pokemon, since she's just starting out. "Really?" Misty asks. "Sure, since you showed me yours, I'll show you mine." Tanner responds with a sly wink and chuckle, causing Misty to palm her face and giggle at the immature joke. The duo head to a battlefield behind the Pokemon Center, with a Pokeball-shaped pool in the center to give all the Pokemon the ability to move properly. As they take their positions, Tanner asks to make the battle a best of 3. Misty agrees to this, and both trainers send out a Pokemon at the same time. Misty sending out her newest Pokemon, Stunfisk, into the water, and Tanner sending out a Woobat. "I didn't expect you to start with your newest member, so you have the type advantage," Tanner states. "Don't count yourself out just yet, Tanner. I may be young, but I've seen enough Pokemon battles in my lifetime to know that there are more to battles than just type matchups." Tanner nods to this, before calling for a gust attack, as Misty tells Stunfisk to dive underwater to avoid it. This works, as Misty then calls for a Thundershock. With a smile, Stunfisk shoots an electric stream at Woobat, but the bat narrowly avoids it. Tanner calls for an Attract. Misty, having seen her sister Daisy's Love Disc use this move against challengers, has Stunfisk barely avoid the attack by diving underwater. The battle has become a battle of fruition, air mobility versus water mobility. Misty then calls for a flurry of water guns. Stunfisk surfaces and attempts to shoot Woobat out of the air. Woobat narrowly dodges each one before Tanner calls for her to counter with a Confusion. Woobat's nose gains a blue aura, and the same blue aura surrounds the water gun. Then, in a similar fashion to Pert's Duosion, redirects the attack at Stunfisk. Misty, recalling this, calls for a Camouflage. The dark brown outline of Stunfisk glows blue, showing that it has become a water-electric type, before almost completely vanishing. The redirected attack pierces the surface of the water, but there's no sign of Stunfisk. This puzzles Woobat as she flies over the pool, looking for where her opponent is. That's when Misty calls for a Thundershock. From behind Woobat, electricity is launched in her direction. However, instead of a slow, small, yellow, single electric current, the electricity is faster, larger, and light blue, with multiple erratic streams. The electric attack connects with Woobat, causing her to shriek in pain before falling to the floor, unable to battle. "Whoa, that Thundershock was powerful!" Misty exclaims. "That actually wasn't Thundershock, that was Discharge. I'm guessing the heat of the battle caused Stunfisk to learn it," Tanner responds. "Wow, really? That's amazing, Stunfisk! I'm so proud of you!" Misty waves in excitement. Stunfisk, not being used to receiving praise, looks puzzled by the positive reinforcement briefly before accepting it, and with a big smile splashes around happily. The two trainers recall their Pokemon, as Tanner states that the score is 1-0 in Misty's favor. "Misty calls Staryu!" Misty sends out Staryu onto the battlefield. "Swadloon, it's your turn!" Tanner sends out Swadloon to oppose the starfish Pokemon. Seeing this Pokemon sends chill down Misty's spine, as although she hasn't seen this Pokemon before, she knows one thing from its appearance, and that is that it's a bug type. The kind of Pokemon that completely creeps Misty out, giving her the heebie-jeebies. The fear causes Misty to lose focus as Tanner calls for an Electro Web. The attack wraps around Staryu, shocking it and making it diff for the water Pokemon to move. "Misty, what's up?" Tanner asks, noticing Misty hasn't made a single command. "Sorry, I got distracted by your Pokemon. Bug Pokemon creep me out, with exceptions like Butterfree and Ledian, you know? Cute bug Pokemon." Swadloon lets out an affront cry at the aspect of being called not cute. Tanner, coming to his Pokemon's defense, says, "Well, I think Swadloon's adorable, and as a Pokemon trainer, you're gonna have to battle bug types sometimes. Besides, in this matchup, it shouldn't be Swadloon's bug typing that worries you. Swadloon, use Razor Leaf!" This reveals Swadloon's second typing to Misty as Grass type. Misty, knowing that Staryu will be too slow to avoid the attack because of Electro Web, calls for a Harden. Staryu bodies become stiff with a gleam. This causes the leaves to glance off Staryu. However, it's still obvious that the super effective attack did some major damage. Staryu, wilting after the hit, stands firm, not wanting to let Misty down. Misty calls for a rapid spin. Staryu rotates swiftly towards Swadloon, tearing through the electro webbing and regaining the speed that it had lost, making contact and knocking Swadloon back as it winces from the hit. Misty calls for another rapid spin, and like a boomerang, Staryu heads back towards Swadloon even faster this time. Tanner calls for a Protect. A green shield forms in front of the leaf-wrapped Pokemon, as Staryu comes in for a hit. The star Pokemon collides with the shield and bounces off the Protect, losing its momentum and lands right in front of Swadloon. Tanner calls for an Electro Web again. Being at point-blank range, Staryu is unable to dodge as the web entangles it. Staryu seizes from the electric attack before falling backwards, its pink gem blinking, indicating it's unable to battle. Misty recalls Staryu, apologizing for being so distracted. Tanner recalls Swadloon, praising him, before addressing Misty. "You know, despite the type disadvantage, you probably would have 2-0'd me if you didn't let your fear overwhelm you, with how fast and mobile your Staryu is compared to my Swadloon. But now the score is all tied up. You also shouldn't diss another trainer's Pokemon like that." "You're right, I'm sorry. Bug Pokemon have just always scared me," Misty says. "Don't worry about it now, let's just finish the battle. I'm sure you'll like this next Pokemon. Palpitoad, it's your turn!" Tanner sends out Palpitoad onto the field. Seeing the water type, Misty instantly begins gushing over the vibration Pokemon, calling him cute and cool. This causes Palpitoad to become overwhelmed, widening his eyes and blushing. "Battle now, admiration later," Tanner says, shaking his head as he somehow knew this would be Misty's exact reaction. Right. Misty calls Goldeen!" Misty sends out Goldeen into the pool. Immediately, Tanner calls for a mud shot. Palpitoad spins and launches 3 globs of mud from its tongue, but Goldeen is ordered to dive under to avoid it. Palpitoad is then ordered to dive into the pool, but this is exactly what Misty wanted. Once in the pool, Palpitoad is flanked by the speedy fish. Looking at the monitors above the opposing trainer's side to see the 2 Pokemon underwater, Misty calls for a supersonic. Narrow sound waves eject from Goldeen's horn and lands, causing Palpitoad to wiggle around in a silly manner. "Oh no!" Tanner cries out. Misty then calls for a horn attack, but Goldeen ends up dashing right past her opponent as his erratic movements made Palpitoad barely twirl out of the way last second. Tanner calls for a round, however instead of using the attack, Palpitoad swiftly swims backwards, slamming himself into a wall. Misty then calls for Goldeen to follow up the self-inflicted damage with a horn attack. This time, horn attack finds its mark, but Palpitoad finally snaps back to reality. Wincing from the damage he endured while confused, Misty calls for another horn attack, but Tanner has Palpitoad counter with a round. The Toad Pokemon vibrates the bumps on his head as colorful and powerful sound waves disperse from them, connecting with Goldeen, sending her careening through the water. Palpitoad is then ordered to follow up with a flail. As he swims towards his opponent, he begins bludgeoning her with 2 kicks and an over-the-head tail slam. This sends Goldeen straight down towards the bottom of the pool. However, she gains her bearings before hitting the pool floor and begins swiftly swimming straight up towards her opponent. Misty then calls for a Fury attack, as Tanner calls for a round again. This time, however, Goldeen quickly and gracefully loops around the colorful sound waves and finds her mark. The speed and momentum she had gained gives her enough power to knock Palpitoad out of the water and into the air. Tanner gasps in shock, and as Palpitoad falls back towards the pool, Goldeen leaps in and out of the water, juggling the Toad with 4 more hits of Fury attack before letting him drop back into the water. However, Palpitoad does not stay submerged, as he resurfaces, belly up, his eyes now swirls, unable to battle. "Goldeen, you're amazing!" Misty shouts joyfully. Goldeen leaps out of the water gracefully, with a joyous expression and a cheerful cry. Tanner then recalls Palpitoad, thanking him for a hard-fought battle, then walks with Misty so they can go revitalize their Pokemon. The 2 young trainers sit in the waiting lounge, waiting for their Pokemon. "Although I don't battle often, I was able to learn a lot about your Pokemon, and you as a trainer. You are very skilled and have a lot of potential," Tanner tells Misty. "Thanks, Tanner, but you almost beat me. I'm not that good," Misty replies. "Why do you want to mainly use water types anyways?" Tanner asks. "Well, you see, I'm one of the gym leaders of the Cerulean City Gym, along with my sisters, and we specialize in water Pokemon. My parents ran it before we were born, so I've always had a natural love for them," Misty hesitantly answers. "Wait, you're a gym leader?" Tanner asks, extremely shocked by this revelation. "Well, I'm supposed to be, but my sisters have always treated me less than, and after our parents died in a car accident when I was 6, they began treating me even worse, but Lily was the harshest. After I caught Goldeen, I thought they'd let me take up the role of a gym leader, but that didn't happen. So now I want to go on a journey and become far stronger than all of them and make my parents proud," Misty answers tearfully. "I'm so sorry that happened to you," Tanner says, resting his hand on Misty's, attempting to comfort her. He then continues, "Listen, Pert is here doing the gym challenge, and our other friend Delaney is doing contests in this region. Maybe you should take on one of those challenges, then come back and face your sisters when you think you're ready, and I'll be by your side the whole way." Misty perks up and thanks Tanner before the 2 trainers are called to receive their Pokemon. Once Misty gets her Pokemon, she asks Nestroy to register for both gym challenges and Pokemon contests. "You're gonna do both?" Tanner asks. "Yeah, why not? I've seen contests on TV and at the Cerulean Contest Hall, and I think there's plenty to learn from taking on both the league and contests," Misty replies as she inserts her trainer ID into the card machine on the counter, as Nestroy finishes registering Misty for the 2 challenges. Tanner just smiles and nods in approval at his new friend. After purchasing a badge and ribbon case and a few other supplies from the mart inside the Pokemon Center, the 2 trainers hop on their bikes and head west towards Pewter City. As they're traveling, Misty asks Tanner to keep a lookout for water Pokemon who can battle on land, as the only Pokemon she has who can do this is Staryu. Tanner corrects her, letting her know that Stunfisk, despite being better aquatic battlers, are actually proficient on land and aerial movements, making them decent land battlers as well. And as a matter of fact, maybe she should have Stunfisk train her Goldeen to help Goldeen learn how to battle on land. Misty's expression gleams, learning the marvel of Stunfisk and hearing such a good idea. After pedaling for another hour, the 2 trainers pull up to a public lodge outside of Mount Moon. Misty takes this time to begin Goldeen's land battle training regiment with Stunfisk, as Tanner looks after the other 4 Pokemon. As the training begins, land mobility seems totally lost to Goldeen, as she just consistently flops around. "Misty, you should train too," Tanner suggests. "What do you mean?" she replies. Tanner looks down as Swadlu waddles to his feet. When Tanner looks back up at Misty, all he sees is a dust cloud in the shape of the red-headed girl, as she is already half a football field away in a tree. Tanner's sweat drops and says, "If Goldeen has to overcome land, you should overcome your fear." Misty begrudgingly agrees to this and walks back over, and sits on the ground 6 feet away from Swadloon, and just stares at him as she shakes the entire time. After about half an hour, Goldeen is able to keep calm and stable on land, but Misty, being completely petrified, is too scared to even move. Tanner, knowing this will be a long process, praises Goldeen and Misty both for their attempts and progress, before both trainers recall their Pokemon and walk into Mount Moon. As they proceed through Mount Moon, Tanner stops and looks behind him, as he gets this feeling that they're being watched. What's up? Misty stops and asks. No, it's nothing. Let's go. The two continue walking as a small silhouette appears behind them, proving that Tanner was right. Someone is watching them. But who? And that's where we're gonna end episode 3 of What If Misty Never Met Ash? New Friends, New Journey. Who or what do you think is the silhouette that's watching Misty and Tanner? And will Misty get over her fear of bug Pokemon? Stay tuned for the next episode of What If Misty Never Met Ash. For now, bye!